Welcome back to the Church of Doom, brothers and sisters. In today's video, I wanted to just show off the Mycelium Order, this set of 9 mushroom monstrosities that I printed from Starium and got painted up all by myself with my own human hands. And I wanted to not only show them off, because I think they're just sick, but I'm going to tell you as I go through each mini what I think some cool abilities for this thing to have would be and how I might use it in my own RPG session. So, we're going to be pitting all of these guys up against this other awesome mini that I have kit bashed, just some sort of wandering martyr of sorts, and I'm going to clear these two guys out just to give us some room here, and we'll talk about them a little bit later on, because this whole set, as you'll kind of see as I get into this, they're pretty connected, and I give a lot of abilities that give them some fun synergy. So let's start with the mama, the big one. I called this the Sportful Womb because it literally is just like dripping with spores and mushrooms and corpses and things, and womb being, you know, it's birthing out whatever these things are, and the idea of mushrooms and funguses being like, you know, returning to the earth, being devoured and given new life, I felt like kind of fit the idea. So that was the name I went with, and there's 3 areas on this mini that I kind of drew some inspiration from for abilities. The first one is obviously the dead corpses, the faces here, the arms that it's scuttling around on. You can even see there's some faces kind of tucked back up in there. And the ability I thought with that is, what if these dudes, these mushroom-infested knights, aren't just, you know, people from the local town who got sick with the mycelic plague or whatever and turned into these guys, but what if they were like literally like from a womb birthed out of this thing? So this is the equivalent of its melee attack. Maybe the Sportful Womb doesn't even have a melee attack. The only thing it can do is excrete 1d4 of these guys. So when it's in its lair, right? Here, let me clear these off for a sec. And our martyr comes running in to slay it. It immediately sends out these things to then go fight it in melee. While it, maybe, you know what? I'm just thinking about this now. Maybe it's tethered. Maybe it can't even move that far. So it just has to stay in place, and it has to send these things out to defend it. I think that would be pretty cool. So then, while that's happening, the other ability I would give it is drawn from these big red balloon mushroom spore-looking things up here that obviously you could have it just shoot out clouds of spores, but I also noticed, those look identical to these other little monsters, which I called these ones what did I call them? The sporeful spines, I think, or something like that. But what if these are its ranged ability? It's in the backfield, it's attached to wherever it's spreading the mycelic plague. It sends these things out to just kind of be its sentinels, to walk around it and keep it safe. And then even before maybe the party arrives, it is it's either shooting, or even I think could be cool if they kind of like detach and just drift through the air, and these things are all circling around the battlefield in the you know, as a ranged AoE sort of ability. And to add to that idea of it being an attack of opportunity, or area of effect ability, maybe if they get within 5 feet or 10 feet, right? They don't even need to get into melee, but if they even sense living flesh nearby, they poof, explode in a cloud of poisonous necrotic spores. So by the time the party has maneuvered or fought their way through these, just having an idea, obviously, since it's got this cool like spinal cord thing going on, they can drift down and tangle up characters, maybe strangle them, or, you know, suffocate them, grapple them, do whatever kind of cool ability you want them to have with that. But by the time they've fought their way through these things, now they've got the melee to deal with, and by the time they get through that, they're finally able to fight the Sportful Womb, but she has taken almost no damage and is pretty beefy, obviously. She looks like she'd have a really high armor class with all of those like layered levels of mushroom. And that leads me to my third idea for what this thing could do. I put, hopefully you can kind of see that, put a bright green wash under all of those thin-looking mushrooms, because I thought it almost looked like ventilation. Like as this thing moved around and breathed in and exhaled its spores or whatever, it would need to do that from somewhere. And so I thought out from underneath mushrooms. I think that's honestly how it works in the real world anyways. But the ability is this. As this thing moves around, and maybe you want to keep it tethered, but you could give it a movement of like 30 feet, right? It can't go more than 30 feet from where it's based at. But as it moves, any space it passes through becomes filled with poisonous spores that are just left behind in its wake as it travels around. So as the party gets there, they'll have to almost kind of try and kite this thing to keep it from moving too much, or even keep it from moving in a particular direction. Like, let's just say this little gap in the mushrooms right here is the only way out of this thing's lair. Well, if it is constantly moving back and forth here, the party's going to have a really hard time maybe safely escaping from this thing. So that is my idea for the main bulk of the force, for the Sportful Womb, the Mycelic Knights, and these little blighted spines, or whatever you want to call them. Now let's go to our two sort of hero characters. I'm going to start with this guy because this dude is just my favorite. He is so cool looking. But this one I called the Blossoming or the Blooming Corpse. And because we've already got a little bit of melee here, we've got a little bit of ranged here, I thought this would be a good opportunity to introduce like a support type character to the crew. So this thing looks like it could move a lot faster than the rest of the party. I imagine they move very slowly, 20 feet, 25 feet. The party can easily outpace them, but this guy is like The Last of Us or something like that, where it's just sprinting across the battlefield at a very terrifying speed, and wherever it goes, it's able to release a few different types of spores. Obviously, you would want to do, or you could have some sort of poisonous, necrotic, kind of assault type spore, but I think its main one should be things that boost the other mycelic forces. So when it's in battle and it's standing here next to all these guys, maybe their damage die goes up from a D6 to a D8. And if the party can kill this thing or kite it out of the battlefield, then everything goes just slows back down, gets a lot weaker. It's easier to kill. Maybe this thing releases spores that are like an area of effect healing type ability. Just any time one of these guys goes down, if it moves within a few feet of it and they're caught in the spores, they're back up and in the fight. Or, what would be cool? Maybe this guy places like timers on all of the dead corpses. So as it's running around, anything that has been dropped in 1d4 turns, the spores will have taken root once again and reanimate all these bodies. So you give the party time to decide, like, oh my god, we've got 3 rounds until everything gets standing back up. Do we think we can kill this thing in time, or do we need to make a run for it, or do we think we need to kill this thing first? And all this guy is here to do is just keep putting the party in situations where they have to make tough decisions, and it'd just be a total pain in the ass. And now we're to my last guy, my favorite one, the Weeping Knight. I called him that because he's got like some red tears running down out of his eyes. I liked the bright white face, and then this giant like trumpet, weird looking Morning Star type spine helmet thing he has. And the abilities I would give him, honestly, I wouldn't go crazy with it. I think the coolest ability in my head is some sort of levitation ability, because he's got that same sort of green underwash that makes it look like a ventilation type thing. Maybe this guy, almost like a Hollow Knight character, just can float around the battlefield, and he's got this huge long lance spear type weapon. So as the party is running around on the ground, he is way up in the air, drifting overhead, lancing down to spike at them with the spear. He's got his shield, so he's pretty well defended. It's only once the party, maybe if they can get him on the ground, right? If they can grapple him or make him fall or anything like that, he's super, super easy to kill. But so long as he is floating up in the air with his spores, he is surprisingly nimble and agile and able to kind of dodge out of the way. Maybe he's got a really high dex for saves and things like that, but you only need to get him down once to kill him. But that brings us, I think, to the end of my lore dump, my bunch of ideas of what I would do if I was running this mycelic order in a D&D campaign or any sort of RPG. I'll plug here at the end again that, I say again, I don't even remember if I mentioned this at the beginning, but I'll mention it here now. This entire set is for sale. All 9 of these minis painted by me, $300 plus shipping, so shoot me an email, reverend.father.doom@gmail.com, or DM me on Instagram or something if you're interested. You can certainly try to haggle me down. But yeah, I'm pretty proud of these guys. I think they're awesome, and I just want to see them live a life full of killing player characters at somebody else's table. So anyways, that's it for me. We say these things in their unholy names. Amen.